Hey everyone, it's Chris from Line Punch Forge. Today, a little introduction to our soldering stencils by Lierre. Michelle Heckel and I have worked on these for quite a long time. Michelle is the owner of Lierre Works Filigree, and originally these tools were designed to use in her filigree work based on a traditional tool. Here in this video, though, we're going to talk a little bit about what can be used for and some other things. So this is the project that we're going to be doing in the video here. So we'll start off with what comes in the pack. Here we have our fun little gold containers. In the curves version, the first one coming out, you got basically 6 shapes. You got 2 ovals, 2 circles, and 2 ellipses or leaf shapes. In this video, though, we're going to use this large circle. So we'll put these away and get ready for our project. So I'm going to use some 20 gauge. What is this? This is sterling silver. So 20 gauge sterling silver. I've got a couple small jump rings there, also 20 gauge sterling. And here I'm going to probably not show you all of this, but I have a 1/2 inch hole drilled in this piece of micarta that allows me to insert the wire and then cut them all to equal lengths. You'll see me dump it out here in a second. Stroop. So I have a bunch of these little wires all the same length, so then when I start forming my shapes, in this case it's going to be like a figure 8 or an S shape, then I can have the same length wire. Now here I'm taking the same gauge wire and wrapping it around a small mandrel and making a bunch of little jump rings. Then I'm going to cut them, and eventually these will be melted down and used as granulation. Full disclosure, I wish I would have used a smaller gauge wire, because in this case I really wanted smaller balls. Yeah. Smaller balls. Alright, I've got all of my stuff here. I was going to start trying to bend a wire with these little pliers here. They're made for snap rings. They had a nice small tip on them, but I decided to go to the more round nose. And this is the shape that I'm making. I'm going to hammer. You'll see me hammering them flat a little bit, maneuvering them around. I can use the tips of the round nose pliers to kind of push them together, and I'm not exactly looking for 100% uniform. They can look similar. That's the beautiful part of doing any kind of this unit or filigree type things, is that they don't all have to be exactly the same. The pattern will kind of mix in, and you won't really notice. So here are all my little figure 8s. Next I'm going to take those guys, put them all, I like using the lid in this case, have them all stored somewhere. And then I'll take my jump rings and throw them on my solder board, and then go make a bunch of balls. Bigger balls than I had anticipated, but yeah, now I know. In order to get smaller balls, I would have used the same size mandrel but a thinner gauge wire, and that would have been perfect. So here is my tip for holding this all in place while you align your stuff. I'm going to take some super glue, CA glue, and I'm going to glue it to my solder pad. And then I'm going to smear the inside of that area with my solder paste. In this case, it's a medium Bench Basics by Pepe Tools. Now what's going to happen here is that the solder paste is going to act as a bit of a glue as I'm laying my pieces in, and it's going to allow them to stay put where I want them. And so I'm just going to smear the inside here, make sure I get it all over. I'm going to add a little bit more just because ideally I want it to be pasty enough to hold my things in place, and a lot of this paste solder is a binder and not necessarily a solder. So you won't necessarily always flood your piece with too much solder. So this is the first time using this method. I was relatively happy with it. It's not the only method. It's not necessarily the right method, but I wanted to try something new for the video. Several times during the video here, you're going to see me use my tweezers to use the backside here to smash down and help align the pieces. And what that's going to do is just kind of make sure everything's nice and flush. And that's the little titanium soldering stencils here make for that nice little surface for me to kind of ride my back of my tweezers on and have them, oops. What are we doing here? Oh, we're just readjusting. So it allows me to ride my tweezers on there, the backside of it, to kind of keep things smoothed out, position, move things around a little bit. And then see, I'm not really doing 100% symmetrical, but the way it works out, it'll look pretty symmetrical. You won't even know that I have no idea what I'm doing. So as we kind of progress a little bit more in this design, it appears more and more kind of together but random. And I'm just pushing stuff into place, seeing what it looks like, adjusting slightly, moving stuff up and down, and trying to get so there are bits and pieces of metal, in this case sterling, touching each other in at least a couple different parts. So what that's going to do is allow for good, strong solder joints. So if you have one solder joint of a larger piece of wire and another one with multiple solder connection points, that one with only one is going to be much less strong. And in order to have a shape that you can then dome, form, manipulate in some way, whether it's on a ring mandrel or something like that, you want to make sure you have those multiple solder joints. So that's kind of what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that I have at least a couple points of contact so that when I heat this, that solder paste that I put inside the stencil will draw up towards the heat and fill in all those little gaps. So that's why touching is really important when it comes to this technique. Okay, one last little bits and piece. I'm going to use the back side of my tweezers to press those all nice in place. Make sure they all have connections where they can be all solder glued together in loving fashion with lots of torch heat and flames. So here I'm adding my large balls, which would have been much nicer had they been smaller. Again, smaller balls. I'm gonna add a little paste to my balls. And one of the things that you'll often see in filigree is the addition to these little granulations. They serve a couple different purposes. First one is they can look relatively pretty and fun, and secondly, they allow for that bridging of the gap on an area that may not necessarily have touching connection points. So they can actually make your filigree or your unit jewelry even more strong by adding those connection points. Shameless plug of the Axis soldering system. Here, put the two pieces of metal together, throw it on my Lazy Chris, and then throw my solderite pad right on top inside of those guys. So when I heat this, that super glue that I use to glue my frame on is going to burn away, and it should be nice and easy for me to remove this. So I'm going to do a little soldering montage now, and you're going to see a couple things happen. You're going to see the binder, which is all the flames here from the paste solder, is burning off. And then you're going to end up seeing right here that solder is starting to flow into those joints. You see it kind of go flash, go liquid, and then I'm going to do finish up heat just one last time. The cool thing about the titanium is it doesn't really act as a heat sink. Titanium doesn't like to share when it comes to heat, so it stays warm but doesn't necessarily like to share it with other things, which makes it great for soldering. So here I'm spraying it with a little bit of Smart Flux, and what that does is just kind of helps release it from that pad, and now I have this finished piece here all soldered up, and it looks like everything kind of went together really nice. So I'm going to throw this in a pin polisher, and then I threw it in a wood dapping block and just pushed down with my thumb so it was nice and supported. And I end up with this guy. Necklace, fun stuff. Pretty simple, pretty easy. You don't have to be an expert at filigree, or even you can fuse inside of this stuff. I've had a lot of people fuse while they're testing it. I've done it. It works relatively well with argentium, gold, silver, all the normal metals that you'd use for precious jewelry. All right, enough with the things that I've made in this video, and let's talk a little bit more about what these soldering stencils can do. Michelle Heckel with Lierre Filigree Works, like I said, helped kind of design these, and I manufactured them for her. There's some pictures of some of the stuff that she's done using the frames. They are absolutely beautiful, and these are going to be available tomorrow, November 18th at midnight. And yeah, so this is what the package comes with: your 6 frames, little ring there, and this is an example of some wire that I threw in the frame and soldered together, and works fantastic. So your imagination is 100% necessary when using these guys, and I hope you enjoy. Make sure you tag both Michelle and I in your creations so that we can see exactly what you're making, and share it with the rest of the world, because we're hoping that these do a lot of really fun things for people's design and open a lot of doors to some new things. So keep your eyes out. There might be some other shapes, some special options, and all sorts of other stuff. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you guys soon.